Wow Dad, look. I got a Gangry X from that Pokemon booster pack. I bought off a scalper for $50.
And I just got Zungli from my Wish in Genshin Impact.
Meg, that shit is worthless. But Christ, that's awesome. Let's keep having fun and indulging in these blind box mechanics.
Blind box mechanics. I thought they were called loot boxes.
You had or booster packs. What are blind box mechanics?
Meg, you idiot. Blind box mechanics is simply the term used to describe any activity in which you're exchanging currency for a mystery good of unknown value.
So like spending money on a loot box in a video game which gives you a random item.
Astute observation as always, Chris. Yes, purchasing loot boxes in video games or booster packs for trading cards are great examples of blind boxes.
That's so.
So what about, are you guys partaking in blind box mechanics?
Yes, Brian, we're having a blast.
Peter, this is basically gambling, and you're exposing Chris and Meg to this. Surely activities like this will be detrimental to their development.
I understand your concerns, Brian, but frankly I don't care about Meg and I think Chris will be fine.
How could you be so sure?
That's a story for part 2. Like this video and follow for more truth and fact.
Do what he says, I gotta hear this. So Peter, are you ready to explain all this?
Of course, Brian. First we should note that it doesn't take a genius to make a connection between traditional gambling and these blind boxes. It is because of these similarities that some smart people have already researched the topic. A study published in Psychology of Addictive Behaviors ran a survey to find any connections between loot boxes, booster packs, and gambling and found that, as expected, there was correlation between both activities and problem gambling, though booster packs had a weaker connection. Unexpectedly though, they found negligible correlation between them both and negative mental health.
So what if they're not sad? You're just gonna let Meg and Chris destroy their lives as long as they have fun doing it?
It's gonna get worse before it gets better, Brian. Because scholars do not all agree on the mental health impacts of loot boxes in particular. A separate study published in Scientific Reports a few years prior basically contradicts this find entirely. In their survey they found that purchasing loot boxes significantly increased chances of having high levels of mental distress compared to those that don't.
I'm not surprised. I'm sure spending money on booster packs or any other virtual items causes similar distress.
That's the thing, Brian. It was specifically loot boxes. They tested other common forms of virtual spending and found little to no correlation compared to loot box purchasing specifically. In fact, one of the researchers from the first survey, David Zendel, previously worked on research specifically exploring the influence of booster packs and found that there was practically no correlation between them and mental distress.
Okay, so booster packs may be slightly better, but I still don't see how you could know all this and still let Chris and Meg gamble like this.
We'll get there, Brian, I promise, but for now you'll just have to wait until part 3. Like this video and follow for more truth and fact.
I can't wait.
So now we've established a connection between loot boxes, booster packs, and gambling, but it all means nothing if we don't know how gambling can affect children as they mature.
I'll be okay, won't I, Dad? How's gambling gonna affect my trajectory?
Shut up, Meg. Anyway, to answer Chris's question, the most prominent effect of gambling in youth is self-explanatory: gambling in your adulthood. A study published in the Journal of Youth Studies asserts that out of 4 possible trajectories, 21% of children would start with non-problem gambling in their youth, followed by problem gambling when they matured.
So what, Dad? Gambling could lead to more gambling. Doesn't sound that bad to me.
Well, that's not the only effect, Chris. While it's important to know the routes your gambling can evolve, you should also look at how external behavior can affect your relationship with gambling. A study published in the Journal of Gambling Studies suggests that children who undergo high mental distress on a more frequent basis are significantly more likely to have problems with gambling, should they be exposed.
So if one of us were experiencing lots of mental stress, it would only expedite our gambling.
Exactly, Chris, but luckily you're doing great. The same study also suggests that problem gambling can commonly lead to children isolating themselves and educational damage. So there's certainly more to be worried about than just gambling more.
See, this is all terrible.
And that's just the developmental complications. Once we get to part 4 we will look at the long-term effects gambling can have on health, and then we'll finally be able to reach some conclusions. Like this video and follow for more truth and fact.
I'm sure it's only downhill from here. So Peter, we've learned about the developmental effects of gambling, but what about the long term?
Of course, Brian, according to a study published in the Journal of Gambling Studies, problem gambling in adulthood can have problematic mental as well as literal health effects. Those with a gambling addiction are statistically more likely to suffer from depression, obviously, but they're also increasingly likely to suffer from cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure.
Well, there we have it. Gambling like this will be destructive through and through. So why do you let Chris and Meg play these games and buy these packs?
Because, Brian, you gotta think about how we've only been looking at problem gambling so far, the most extreme you can get. The truth is, Brian, that the majority of people are gonna fall somewhere between barely gambling at all and recreational gambling. In fact, the same study from earlier finds that 60% of youth never encounter gambling issues, and 13% do, but resolve it by adulthood. That's 73% of children not suffering long-term.
Okay, well clearly Meg and Chris are currently in the area of recreational gambling. What kind of effects does that have?
So glad you asked, Brian. According to this study published in the Eastern Economic Journal, finds that gambling at a recreational level can decrease one's stress levels and increase satisfaction with life. Not only that, but recreational gambling has recorded little to no impact on physical health, so it's not even costing you your health.
Well, that doesn't sound terrible, but I'm not entirely convinced. I just don't trust gambling to do any good.
I completely understand your concerns, Brian, and they are valid. Chris could wrestle with terrible health effects if we let it get bad while he grows. That's why it's so important that we don't let it get bad.
So you're telling me that booster packs and loot boxes will only do real harm to a child if they lack proper regulation?
Exactly, Brian. Once you're into gambling addiction, it's hard to stop. That's why, just like with any other addiction, the easiest way to avoid it is to not let it start. Take this for example. In a study from Journal of Gambling Studies, they find that gambling does not increase your chances of starting to drink alcohol, but find that if you already drink, gambling will increase your desire to do so.
You're telling
Bad habits feed into each other, Brian.
You're telling me the best way to avoid all these effects we learned about is to make sure your child knows the risks associated and to instill self-regulation. What is this? Some sort of call to action?
You could say that, Brian.